Playboi Carti never does interviews, and when I heard that he released a lengthy chat with XXL today, I knew that I would have some things at least to say about it. From a supposed new album titled Music with songs like Wicked that were actually played for XXL, to his current life goals and mental health status, there's a lot that's mentioned and teased in this two-part interview, so let's dive in. So I'm probably just going to do a little side-by-side here with both of the interviews and me talking about them. Just to start off, these interviews were conducted, written. The first one is by Aaliyah Woods, and the second being from Vanessa Satin. And so good job to these two. I just want to give full credit to them. They completed the interviews and they killed it. But so starting off, this one's titled Playboi Carti reveals details on his new album, Opium Label, and Lil Uzi Vert relationship. You know, kind of what seems to be a clickbaity title until you click on it and see that he actually not only discusses these things, but gives even further details. So like, I think they could have even clickbaited that title a little bit more. But they talked to him in early March back in Atlanta, and first starting off basically talking about, you know, his supposed new album that he has, which he says is right now going to be called Music because that's where he's at, you know what I'm saying, music. It's a very Kanye-esque sentiment. It really shows he's been around Kanye for a bit, in that, and almost in a Rick Rubin sense of breaking things down to their most fundamental element. And, you know, I think we saw a little bit of that on Whole Lotta Red, and just kind of like, I mean, even Pierre Bourne, his production is simplistic in the way that there are, you know, a couple few identifiable instruments, but it's about how they're all synchronized together that makes it special. And the same thing can be said about Whole Lotta Red and how meticulous each song is in sort of its reason for being on the album. Granted, I do think there is some fat that can be trimmed off of Whole Lotta Red, but still, that being said, you know, I think what Carti's trying to say here is that, you know, it's all a part of his creative process, and to sort of label it and categorize it, it's like, is that really for him to do, or is that for us to do? And then he goes on, talks a bit about his baby voice, and, you know, kind of says what I just said about can't get mad at fans for saying baby voice, that's how it is. You know, let the fans judge, critique, analyze how they will, because to a certain extent, that is outside of your control. You make the art for yourself, ideally. And, you know, talking about this is going to be his forthcoming album, and talking about the differences kind of between Whole Lotta Red and his sort of stuff before that, which obviously if you've been here, you know that Self-Titled, Die Lit, and Whole Lotta Red all have their kind of different alluring aspects that make them unique, idiosyncratic in their own special ways, but it's all within this sort of magnum opus of Playboi Carti and what he likes to do with his music, with his albums. And so with that, he talks about his music isn't just for the contemporary ages, he's making music for forever. And, you know, if you go back to Die Lit and listen to it now, it's dated beautifully. It came out in 2018. We're looking at 4 years ago, and some of the songs on that album, in particular songs like Shoota, Fell in Love, Flatbed Freestyle, have really shown their, I want to say, just how ingenious I think a lot of the songs like those were structured and put together in a way that is timeless. So like sentiments like this that would normally seem almost cringy from another artist, to me at least, come across as completely genuine. And then going on with that, he says that he has a new track called Wicked, and they say that it has a sonic appeal unlike what fans have heard before, which means to me that they heard it. Carti played it for them, which means he has new music. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, but it's the question as to whether he'll drop, tease, or do anything with this music. In fact, if I was to guess, I don't think we'll hear anything that he's working on right now. In its current state, I don't think we're going to hear any of it. In fact, I think this interview in a larger scope was more of a label obligation than him wanting to do this, because let's be honest, if Carti wanted to talk to somebody, do you think the first people he would go to would be XXL? I'm just throwing that out there. And basically talking about his songs and sort of where he's at now. He has a lot to say, he's ready to speak his mind, and, you know, talking more about his transparency with his mental health. And that's something that he talks about here, saying love, sex, drugs, changes in my life, and that he's been rapping about going to rehab, and that he thinks he's bipolar, he wants everybody to be free, and sort of finishing that off with saying that you can't put a title onto me. It's kind of a fragmented statement in and of itself, but I think it shows that he is, nothing is just surface level. This isn't like Carti isn't just making music to just like make music. He wants to say something with the music if he's going to make it. And talking with the relationship between him and Uzi and the so anticipated 1629, he says, I love Uzi to death, saying Uzi's working on mad music right now. He doesn't know if he's serious about a lot of things, but he hopes one day that they can change the world. And to me, what that honestly tells me is Carti is more serious about this than Uzi, which if you've been paying attention, I think that Carti takes, all of this more seriously than Uzi does. Everything from the tour to how meticulous his albums are put together into how deliberate everything is on Carti's journey right now, from his styling and wardrobe to how he just presents himself in the public sphere in a very sort of shrouded way. It's all purposeful, and those are decisions that I feel like Uzi isn't sort of dealing with as much now, whereas like he had his moment with Eternal Take, but Carti doesn't have moments. He has his career panning out over different rappers' moments that sort of act as their entire careers. Carti doesn't want to operate in this sort of one-dimensional, I'm dropping an album and I have this hype, here's this sort of confusing pull into my album, what is Eternal Take? Carti doesn't willingly play into those things from our perspective. There could be a possibility that he is just sitting behind the computer, he knows how to push all of our buttons and he's doing that. And to a certain extent I think that's there, but at the end of the day, I think this, like I said, shows that Carti just takes this a lot more seriously than Uzi does. And that's a little disappointing because I think that means that we are not going to see this project. I don't think we're ever going to see it, honestly. It seems like Carti is holding out for hope right now, because if he says it's dead, he knows that Uzi is just going to be like, okay, Carti doesn't want to do it, I won't do it. Uzi's very reactionary like that. And then he goes on to talk about his Opium label with Ken Carson, Destroy Lonely, Homicide Bino, and Mvte. I'm going to talk about these guys more going forward, but I love this section because it shows that Carti is not, only concerned with his career. He is concerned with bringing up people underneath him and sort of lending his stylistic intricacies down to them and seeing what they can make out of it. And he specifically talks about his relationship with Bino and how he had him there with him when he was making his music, and just sort of exclaiming that he thinks that these guys are superstars. And, to a certain extent, I really do. I think I agree. And now let's move on to this Q&A, much longer interview. Talking about, so it's funny, the interview opens with the interviewer, who is Vanessa Satin, talking about how Carti was mentioning Tech 9 earlier before they started the interview, and asking if that's why he's wearing his face paint, which I thought was such a good observation. And he says that, Tech 9 is the pioneer of what he has going on right now. And I was around when Tech 9 was big. I was younger, but I was fully aware of who he was, and I was listening to his music. But, I wasn't as familiar with sort of that cultish following that he apparently had, and giving him his flowers. And I love that. I love a million times love that rappers are willing to point out these signifiers that they are so influenced by. Because a lot of the times, you'll have to pluck it out of an artist, like, hey, talk about that shirt you're wearing, talk about where that influence comes from. For Carti, we know, like, punk is a huge influencer for him. The cover of Whole Lotta Red is a rip on Slayer magazine from LA, which was a heavy punk magazine, incredibly indie, sort of started off with those sort of what we now know as zines, but that culture was embraced with heavy punk music, as well as these sort of wardrobes, attitudes, and eventually I would say almost sort of vocal stylings that we hear on Whole Lotta Red, riding off of those instrumentals that, they're not punk in the sense that it sounds like it's the Clash playing, but they're punk in the sense that they are breaking those same barriers and sort of exploring those similar, I would say, previously unexplored spaces of music, life, and culture. And, you know, I think Carti talking about even Tech Nine in here it does a great thing for, I think, art, the transparency of art influences and where we pull our influences from. And talking about the Juggalo fans, diehard audiences. But what he really liked about Tech Nine is that he stuck to his own vision, in that, you know, for every Tech Nine fan with face paint on, there are 5 naysayers who say, that's a cult, that's ridiculous. Why would you ever sign up for that? So I think that that's a very, very interesting distinction for him to pull out and sort of talk about in that way. And then he talks a bit about, you know, his cultish following, and how, you know, it essentially branches out of what he likes to do as himself. Like right now he says he's into tattoos, and, you know, it's a bunch of people that take tattoos seriously, and, you know, he's just doing him, saying you got rock stars, punks, emos, goths, and he doesn't want to categorize himself, as we know, but pulling from these things and being aware of them is a completely other conversation. And then they talk about the image that he has in his Magnolia video and the XXL cypher in 2017, just how different that is from the Carti now. As you know, Playboi Carti fans know, that was the Cash Carti phase. We're in the Vamp phase now. But, you know, he kind of talks about even back then wearing the backpacks he was wearing and stuff like that. It was seen as kind of obtuse for rappers at the time, except for like Lil Uzi. He was the other exception at that given time. And now he's talking about, you know, now he wears Rick, Raph, all that, and essentially talking about, you know, he has people that he grew up with in the hood, and then he has, you know, people that he's friends with in the industry. So he sort of has these two different expectations of who you are and what you're supposed to be. And he sort of says that he doesn't really abide by those rules, saying that, you know, he loves everybody, he doesn't judge anybody, he has gay friends, trans friends. And he says, you know what I'm saying? I done dated, and then ellipses, and they cut off the quote, which is kind of confusing. And I posted a TikTok about this, sort of saying, stop saying that he is Carti's out of the closet or whatever, because he didn't say anything in the slightest closest to that. And if he was doing that, that's totally fine, but let's not take his words and put new meaning onto them. But I'm very happy to see that Carti is an ally of the LGBTQ plus community. I think everybody's happy to see that, and I think everybody knew that to a certain extent. I mean, Carti's been all about trying new things, and so it would come as a shock to me if he was setting boundaries and barriers around, you know, things like that. And then, you know, going off and talking about what does he appreciate in a person, he says he appreciates loyalty and being able to trust people. And, you know, I think that also reflects well on his career, because, you know, look at how Filthy contributed to Whole Lotta Red. You know, we know Filthy that can make sounds like that, but to be able to trust a producer to keep that sonic consistency for you throughout that album is a huge piece of trust that I think is hard to come by. And for him to recognize that, I think is huge as well. And I love this question. The interviewer says, you seem elusive, quiet, standoffish, and asking, are those things by nature? Would you agree with that? And saying, is this all intentional? Sort of this attitude and this sort of persona that you exude. Like, basically, is it a persona? Are you actually like this? I love his response. Sometimes I feel like I don't know how to talk, so I don't be wanting people to judge me based on how I talk. I was never like that. Even when I got around my white friends, I'm like, what's up, shorty? You know what I mean? And saying that he doesn't switch up and he's a product of his environment. I love that. Oh, and at the bottom of cool, how could I forget this? I can get a skincare routine. I can dress up nice, but I can't take that Atlanta out of me. I love that so much. Embracing who you are intrinsically as a person, as a curious human being, and also saying I'll never forget my roots, and I know that those that I grew up with will always accept me for who I am. You know, this is probably the most introspective interview Carti's ever done. That's why I'm so excited about this. And now transitions to talking about being a father and the responsibilities that come with that. Bills, take care of people, take care of his mom, take care of his family, take care of his baby mama and his son. yeah, so kind of, talking about the responsibilities he has. I love the accentuation on that. I pay a lot of bills. I just thought that was funny. Asking if that's stuff that stresses him out and stuff, and he just says he wakes up and smiles. There's no reason to be mad. He's blessed. He said that he stays in the studio, which, okay. I'm just gonna leave that one be. And now, exciting, you played some new music, and that song was Wicked. And this is where, again, he's talking about his album being named Music just because that's what he's making right now. He doesn't want to categorize himself or sort of put rules under anything. But ultimately, he doesn't want to be boxed in even to just a rapper. And he sort of talks about this and saying in reference to like the cultish stuff that he's been accused of, like, is the satanic symbolism more than that, blah, blah, blah. And is, if he's playing into that, he says that he didn't make the rules. People go this way, I go that way. And I love that response because it's neither confirming nor denying the suspicions of the interviewer. And basically saying that, and now, even more exciting, he talks to Kanye West every day. That's shocking, and I believe it too. I mean, we've seen the posts between them on Instagram and stuff. He says, I don't really have too many friends, and that's really one of my friends. I love him. I love A$AP Rocky. What those two guys did for me, I love them, and I appreciate everything. Man, I really wish he would shout out some like really old people that helped put him on. Mexico Drew, Ethereal. But yeah, it's good always to see that he is sort of collaborating with these high and mighty minds in the industry, because he's obviously very quiet outside of this. This is hilarious. Asking if he has relationships outside of hip hop, and if not, why do you think you don't have so many? He says, I would love to get invited to some parties. I don't get invited nowhere. And they ask, why not? He says, I don't know. People are excited when they do see me. I like to work. I'm from Atlanta, where you can't really like just pop out and go anywhere anyway. So that mentally travels with me. I get what he's saying. I get that. But saying I don't get invited anywhere, I think is a bit of a self-pity statement, but I think it's also pretty funny. And then transitioning what success looked like for him on this next project. And he sort of alludes to people being surprised and saying, yo, this is hard and not. So I think essentially he's saying he must have proved the naysayers wrong, which I'm not crazy about. But I love what he ends it with, saying somebody could be a crappy person but make great music, and you can't deny that. So, even if you are a POS, still gonna get your flowers if you're Playboi Carti. And then, transitioning from where's your next album to where is your next, it goes from where's your next album to who are you mentoring? And he is, if you know, mentoring the Opium label, which is his, with Ken Carson, Destroy Lonely, Homicide Bino, and Homicide Michi. He also has a gang of producers, people like Starboy, Out of Town. I'm sure there's a bunch more in there. We know he works with Filthy, Pierre, all those guys a lot. I'm sure they're always in rotation. But talking about, what's he excited for next? He says his son's birthday. I love that. Also saying, shouting out love to Iggy Azalea, which I think is great. And this might be the quote that is pulled the most from this interview. How would you describe yourself? That's really such a broad question, but what would you say to that? What does he say? Adorable, but evil. Okay, I love it. I love to see it. I wish there was just a better way, if they could maybe like embed a laughing or like laughing crying emoji or something in that quote, because I guarantee he was snickering when he said that. There's no way he wasn't. Here's another great quote. Interviewer says, adorable but evil. Okay, so we got Opium, we got the clothing line, the next project, people who get their flowers, we got things that frustrate you, we got your goals. And he says, and I love this, don't say give your flowers, that's so corny. Be like Tech 9, boom, he loves Tech 9. And I've had this before when I interview people, essentially them being like kind of trying to write the interview for you in real time. Be like, nah, don't say this. say that. It's like, I'm gonna say that you said to say that, because then we get things like this, and it just comes across as just hilarious. It basically shows love to MF Doom again as well, which we've seen in the past. And then he talks about his manager, Erin Larson, how she's always been there for him. You know, even saying like, yo, I need lasers, and she's getting it right out the gate. And then asking if there's anything else that he wants to add. He says, make sure to put in that I love my baby mother. It definitely needs to be known that Iggy is the best mom in the world. My son is perfect. He's too perfect. I need to roughen him up a bit. He even said earlier that he's going to buy his son a chain for his new birthday. So I got to say, I'm kind of excited for that myself, to see how, what's his name again? Onyx will be able to carry a huge dangling, I'm assuming platinum or gold chain on his neck. But yeah, I'm so happy that even if this was just some label obligation, that Carti is able to, you know, kind of air out his opinions and his feelings and his future, his prospects, what's going on in his life right now, reflecting on what's happened in the past, and using all of that to talk about what might happen in the future. So let's see if this time around he can change the stigma against him, because if I were to guess, I don't think we're hearing Wicked, and I don't think we're going to hear music. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you.